Welcome to the Focal Insights Podcast Founder Hour edition, hosted by co-founder Joe Pollock. Joe has been in the e-commerce industry for over 25 years. He grew and bootstrapped his own startup to a successful exit. Founder Hour episodes go behind the scenes to learn how some of the best e-commerce brands were founded, grown, and operated straight from the founders themselves. Founder Hour is brought to you by Focal Software, a new generation ERP and operation suite for e-commerce brands and third-party marketplace sellers. Focal was built with SMB brands and marketplace sellers in mind to help them grow profitably. Now let's welcome our host, Joe Pollock.
Hello and welcome to the Focal eCommerce Insights Podcast, where we chat with e-commerce entrepreneurs about business, selling online, and how to overcome challenges for success. Joining us today is Laurinda Lee-Retter. Laurinda is a social entrepreneur and the founder of Kind Karma Company. Kind Karma is a social enterprise that employs vulnerable youth in an art therapy-based employment model that she started in 2017. She attended Indiana University, has been profiled in Forbes, Vanity Fair, Flair, Cause Artist, and other publications. Past corporate world experience includes Taco Bell, AWS, MasterCard, Marriott Hotels, and Elevation Pictures. And she currently lives and works in Toronto. Laurinda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. We always start this podcast with the backstory or the history of how you became an entrepreneur. You talked about some corporate background experience, or at least working with big companies, and always switching and starting a company is quite a bit different from that. So why don't you tell us how you made that switch and what was the rationale or the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so when I was young, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think it was a lifelong dream of mine. So even from the time when I was a teenager, I come up with really crazy harebrained ideas of businesses that I would start and things that I would do. When I worked in the corporate world, I was an executive assistant. So I was an executive assistant for over a decade, and I supported, C-suite directors, presidents, VPs. And I think throughout that time as well, I have a friend and she worked in accounting, and every week I'd have a different idea to pitch her about a business I would start. And it wasn't until I think I truly found my passion, which was giving back, that I finally came up with like a business idea that stuck and that I could really subscribe to and for the long term. Because I think even if I acted on any of my ideas, it wasn't something that was completely aligned with my passion and what I wanted to do. So yeah, I started Kind Karma. I worked part-time when I started Kind Karma. So I did part-time just to get a launch, just so it wasn't, I had no source of income, and then gradually took steps back from my corporate role as the company grew.
Yeah, excellent. So when you say you've had all these ideas, business ideas, was Kind Karma your first go at it though, or did you have any other runs at starting your business before you found that fit for you?
No, I like to jump in. So I had a couple of ideas that I did have go. One of them was when I was young. I think I was 20, and I wanted to create a completely online bridal planning app or platform, so you could just have everything online. It was a networking where you could network with other bridal ventures. I actually paid somebody to create a website, create like this whole app, and then that never panned out. And and then I think what really helped me find my passion was my partner and I, right before we got engaged, we actually started a nonprofit called Bottles for Change, which we live in Toronto, and you have to return all your empty bottles to the beer store and you get your money back. And we just noticed in where we were living, there's a ton of condos, but nobody returned their bottles. So you have mountains and mountains of empties sitting in the garbage room. And so like, what if we volunteered and got some sort of a network together to return all these bottles, and we would take the money and give it back to people who needed it. So that was how the nonprofit started. And that's when I kind of found my passion that, oh my God, like, even though I have a full-time job, I'm finding time to do this because I care about giving back and doing good in the community. So that was kind of the catalyst for Kind Karma.
Yeah, very nice. So we also talk about challenges when starting a business, and everybody faces them. And if you're still in business, then you're going to have some more in the future and to overcome. But you started your business just before a pretty big world event, which was COVID. So you had to go through that. Um, Talk a little bit about that, and if it affected, if you made a switch to e-commerce. A lot of people put more emphasis on e-commerce during COVID because, nobody could go anywhere, right? So talk a little bit about that time period for you.
Yeah, so in my eyes, COVID was almost a blessing in disguise in certain ways. When I started Kind Karma, I had intended for it to be an e-commerce business. I wanted it to be an online business where people bought things and then we would ship it. However, my marketing strategy when I launched was to get the word out by doing in-person events. So I would attend a lot of trade shows, a lot of markets, a lot of events, things like that. And those, when you're a small business, I mean, you're trucking around, you're doing all the shows, you're talking to all the people. That takes a toll physically. So you're just physically drained by the end of, if you're doing a 3-day weekend where you've worked 50 hours in the course of 3 days, you're just exhausted. So the last thing you're going to do on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning is sit down and work on the e-com side. And then you have to gear up for a show the next week. So I think I was caught in that cycle of events, trade shows, and just doing the in-person things that I neglected to do the e-commerce side, just because there's only so many hours in the day. And so COVID almost was a little bit of a blessing in terms of it made me sit down. Now that I didn't have events to go to, it made me sit down and actually force me to work on the digital side, the e-com side. How can we reach people through Instagram, through social media, through our website? How do we work on SEO? So I think in that sense, it really helped me build a business. So I'm grateful for that as much as I did not like the rest of the COVID experience.
Yeah, nobody liked it, but it was an amazing period of time where some businesses really did benefit from it, and some others obviously did not benefit or got hurt very badly.
Yes.
So at least you had some benefit out of it, focusing on e-commerce. So let's talk a little bit about that. What did you do? You had to start with a website, and I know you've got a Shopify website now, but how did that go? You had something else to begin with, right?
Yeah, so I actually launched the business on Squarespace, and that was just because I liked the flexibility that Squarespace allowed for designing the website. So aesthetically, you had more options in terms of how it would look, how it would function, how it would be set up. But when you're talking e-commerce, it's very hard to stay off of Shopify just because there's such an e-commerce giant and everything just plugs in so seamlessly. So I ended up, after 1 year, I made the switch to Shopify just to just have everything plug in. So it plugged into our Instagram, it plugged into our email campaigns, it plugged into all of those things. So it was just, and they always have apps for anything and everything that you can imagine. So it just makes it a much more seamless transition, and just helps with operating efficiency. So I think that's where we made the leap to Shopify. But during COVID, it was more so like we had all of that set up. And even before COVID, I had made the switch to Shopify. But I think that during COVID, it was just a very, I had to focus more on it, keeping it updated, doing more social media posts, engaging with people on social media, and do more digital outreach, focus on actually sending out email campaigns, not once every 6 months, but probably more consistently so that we remain top of mind. I think in creating that digital strategy, I think that was more what I focused on during COVID that really helped us grow in that space.
Yeah, and Shopify also has some components or ability to manage inventory or distribute inventory to different platforms. So it sounds like at that point you had your own website, so that's one channel. Did you branch out to other marketplaces like Amazon or Walmart, or what did you do for that kind of distribution?
Yeah, I think during COVID, there was a big push and emphasis on supporting local businesses, supporting small businesses, because they were the ones that were hardest hit. And because, a small business has a small store, they rely so much on that foot traffic and on people supporting them with purchases. So that was really great, the emphasis on small businesses and purchasing from them. And I think with that emphasis, there popped up a lot of marketplaces that people would want to drop ship, from local businesses. And so I got a lot of requests to join marketplaces. And there were apps on Shopify that just let you link your inventory, link your products, and it was a very seamless process. So during COVID, we were on a lot of different marketplaces, big and small. We have not tried, I think we were accepted to be a part of Walmart, and I think we tried Amazon very early on. But I think with those marketplaces, it becomes more of a challenge. Here in Canada, we have a very big department store chain called The Bay, which now is in financial trouble. But back then it was really big. And so we were accepted to sell on The Bay. But I think the problem with those is they don't allow that seamless it's not very seamless operationally. So you have to manually upload all of your products, all of your SKUs onto all these platforms. So unless you're actually going to see a return on all that time and investment, then it's almost not worth it, because it's a lot of legwork to upload all the SKUs one by one onto a platform like that. So I think for that reason, I get very hesitant now with things like that, because it's just a lot of work.
Yeah. Those marketplaces that don't have automation and connectivity become very, very time consuming, because not only just keeping track of orders and shipping and fulfillment, but also any kind of reporting. You end up having to build your own spreadsheets basically to manage something like that. And that does take a lot of time, and that takes you away from things that you need to be focused on.
Yeah, and even inventory. Like, I think we had spent so much time uploading, but unless you're constantly uploading, like changing your inventory every day, something could sell out and it hasn't been automatically synced. Now you're dealing with an angry customer from a marketplace who bought something, but you actually don't have it because you sold out of it. So I think for that reason, it gets a little bit gnarly and a little bit tricky.
Yeah, you get an upset customer, and some of the marketplaces, I'm not that familiar with the Bay, but some of them will kind of penalize you if you don't manage your inventory and have things on hand if you're offering them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened, I think, with us in the Bay. It was just anytime you received a message, whether it was for an exchange or a refund, and they weren't even necessarily angry customers, it was just a question, it came up as an incident. And so if you had a certain number of incidents, then all of a sudden you're not a good seller, because you've had all these incidents when somebody probably just reached out to ask you, they got the wrong size and can you ship them a new one? So I think it's very tricky, because of course these big companies can't go through on a situational basis and be like, oh, this actually isn't an incident, it's just a question. It doesn't get flagged the same way. So I think it becomes tricky then, and then eventually they're like, oh, we can't have you as a seller because your ratings are below a certain level, and then you've just uploaded everything for no reason.
And you didn't even do anything wrong.
That's exactly it. And you also don't know, I think, with the clientele. There's a different clientele with every marketplace, and your products might not fit with that clientele. So it's hard to gauge if, especially before you do all that legwork, if it's going to be the right fit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you talked a little bit about some technologies that you're using. Squarespace got replaced by Shopify. You've sort of lightly worked with some marketplaces. Are there any other tools that you're using to help you run the business from a software side?
Yeah, we definitely use QuickBooks and WagePoint. QuickBooks for all of our accounting and WagePoint for all of our payroll. So that's made life so much easier, because I think before I struggled with accounting. So now I have an accountant who does all that for me, and she uses QuickBooks, and it keeps me on top of everything. Every month I'll get, your balance sheet and your profit and loss statements. And then with WagePoint, it just makes everything seamless in terms of payroll. All employees have access to their payroll, so I don't have to go and manually print out pay stubs and give it to them. They can just log in anytime and check it out. And it also makes sure that we are remitting everything on time as well in terms of taxes and things that we owe. So I definitely recommend those, and I think they integrate as well with our store. So it's been super helpful to have that. And as a business owner, you always want to know kind of how you're doing numbers wise. So I think it's been super helpful in keeping me on track and keeping that top of mind for me on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, especially we work with a lot of customers that are in multiple marketplaces, and they all have so many fees and charges, and it's hard to have visibility into those unless you have the tools that can manage that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to maintain margins if you don't even know, where the money's going.
Exactly. So because that would be me. I mean, my mom was an accountant. So I think when I first started out in 2017, we were so small, but I would just give her all my receipts like at the end of the year, and she would just spend a week and go through them all and enter them all into a software that I had no idea how to use. And then she would just tell me. But as you get bigger, it's kind of hard because you're buying materials all the time. You have subscriptions, you have costs, exactly fees from marketplaces. And if you don't realize what's coming in, what's going out on a more regular basis, it's easy to overspend. It's easy to just think you have a lot of money, and with taxes as well. I was just like, oh, I have all this money in my, bank account. I can just go buy all these things. But actually should have been set aside for, taxes and payroll taxes and things like that, that I had no idea I owed. So I think it's very important to be on top of that and to see it all laid out.
Yeah, I think you hit on a very important point there, that when a company is growing, at some point you're going to hit a level of complexity and it's almost too late to get a solution in place, because you didn't know you were in the mess until 6 months after you were in the mess.
Yes, exactly. And I think we had that a couple of years ago where I just overspent. I thought we signed a lease on a place with our forecast said we could afford it, but then I had also not factored in, certain other things. So then all of a sudden we owed all this money, and then you got to dig yourself out of that hole. And how do you dig yourself out of that hole? So it's probably a mistake a lot of people make, and it's a learning lesson. But yeah, it's kind of hard, and it's not a nice situation to be in.
Yeah, it's very common, very common.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing on talking about e-commerce, it's about a $6 trillion market right now, moving to 8 trillion. So it's growing. It's growing very rapidly. What are your thoughts on the future of business and e-commerce as it relates to business?
I think it's, like you said, it's going to just keep growing. I think one of the things that COVID taught us as well was it made us more comfortable purchasing online. Especially, I see that in Canada. I think people were more reticent in Canada to purchase online. My brother-in-law had never purchased anything online ever, not even off Amazon or anything, prior to COVID. But then with COVID, he had to learn to, because he couldn't go anywhere to buy anything. So he slowly, that became part of his routine, where he was like, oh, now I can buy things online. So I think it changed a lot of habits in terms of shopping. And so I can only see that growing, especially as we look for more ways to make our lives easier. We want to run less errands. We want to go out to pick up things less. So we can't even go out to pick up food sometimes. And that's where Uber Eats makes all of their money. So I think as we lean into the convenience factor, then I think e-commerce is just going to grow. So it's a matter of capturing, for businesses, it's a matter of capturing their share of that huge marketplace and opportunity.
Yeah, and there's no question that COVID helped e-commerce and doing exactly what you described. It changed habits, and it made people more comfortable with the concept of purchasing online. And then once, it doesn't matter what you're purchasing online, once you're comfortable with it, then you can purchase everything online.
Exactly. So it just opened this whole avenue. And I think that's where you see a lot of the growth, is just because now you can buy anything. It's just a click of a button and you're comfortable. You know it's going to arrive. If it doesn't arrive, you know there's safety steps that you can access, or things that you could do to get your money back. So I think people feel a lot more comfortable doing it. However, it's funny because I've noticed in the last couple of years, with that ease of access in e-commerce, there has been more of a demand for experiences, and so things outside of e-commerce. So it's been interesting just to see that play out, because I think we spent so much time too in front of our computers during COVID that people are now also eager to get out, but they're not spending money on buying things as much as they are spending money on doing things. So I've seen that big shift just in our operations. So we've started to offer services such as like customized jewelry, a jewelry bar, engraving, things like that, and workshops, and people love that. So we're seeing a lot more in terms of that shift. So if you need something, it's great. You could buy things on e-commerce, but people are also looking for things that they can do outside of e-commerce. So it's nice to see.
Yeah. And you mentioned also the what used to be the biggest hurdle to e-commerce was the trust factor for putting in a credit card for something and thinking that people may get ripped off, but that really has almost gone away at this point.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are very, very comfortable at this
Because
point.
because I think too, everybody pretty much has had something happen to their credit card, whether they bought online or e-commerce. So they've kind of realized that it kind of happens regardless. No matter if you buy online, you could be buying gas at a gas station and physically having your card, and you can still, somehow get compromised. So I think they've kind of seen it as this can happen regardless. And so it's not as big a deal as it seems, because there are, safety measures where the banks have, where you get your money back, you do a report and all that stuff. So I think it's a lot less fear in terms of just giving out your credit card.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's getting easier and easier, which is a convenience factor. And people always weigh the convenience and based on a lot of things, but one of them is saving time too.
Yes.
You can save a lot of time, which is of course valuable to everyone. But it's becoming more and more convenient, more and more safe. And I think those things will continue into the future.
And I think you also get this, you see on social media all the time, the happiness that you feel when you get a package that arrives on your doorstep, and it's kind of like Christmas. So I think you kind of also get addicted to that feeling, where it's a different kind of feeling because you don't know when it's exactly going to come. And then when it comes, it's almost like, woohoo, there's a present for me. So I think that feeling that only comes from e-commerce is another.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. That's a good point. It's almost like you buy it and get excited twice, right? As soon as you buy it online, and then when it arrives as well.
Yes.
And anticipation of it is as well.
Yeah, and then you actually see it in person. It's like a second surprise. So I think it's easy to get addicted to that feeling of joy when you actually get something physically that you've already joyfully purchased online.
Yeah, and you talked about experiences. There's been studies about vacation planning, and when you book a trip, the anticipation of that good time actually gives you a good mentality. So maybe there's a little bit of that in e-commerce as well. I'd like to think so.
Absolutely. And I can attest to that. I used to buy all these things, and sometimes I wouldn't remember what I bought if it was late at night. I was just like, oh, this looks nice. And then it arrives, and you just, the anticipation of it coming.
Sometimes it's a total surprise.
Exactly. And you're just like, oh my God, I just bought myself a present. My past self bought future self a gift. And it's just it's a cool feeling.
Okay, well, getting back to just business in general, and I guess and e-commerce, what advice do you have for anyone that's doing their research and thinking about getting into business or an e-commerce business? What tips do you have for somebody that's about ready to make the leap or thinking about it like you did, it sounds like, for many years?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, a couple of things. I think one, do what you're passionate about, because you learn from me, I started a lot of businesses that it was just a business and I wanted to see if it would do well. But if it's not your passion, then it's hard to sustain it because then you'll get bored and it'll just go by the wayside. But I think the other thing that people don't often think about is the value proposition aspect. What are you offering people that's unique? And what's going to make people want to purchase from you as opposed to somebody else? And I think that a lot of people just like to jump on certain ships. I know drop shipping was a huge ship for a while. So everybody was jumping on that ship and just let's drop ship items and things like that. It's easy money. You're making this much. But at the same time, if you have 100,000 people doing it, what makes your drop ship platform unique from anyone else's? And how is that going to be sustainable 2-3 years down the road? What are you going to do to keep it fresh, keep it different? So I think that's something that a lot of people don't typically think about. They typically think about what's trending, what's cool now, and how can I jump on this bandwagon? So I think it's very important to actually come up, plan a certain distinct value proposition and then that you can use to market yourself as this is why I'm unique and this is why you should purchase from me. And I think even something like that is a huge, because I know when I started, my husband said, you're going to be one of a gajillion jewelry companies. Like, how are you going to make money? What makes you unique? And he was like, you're never going to profit, not in a bad way, but just also like be realistic because you have so much competition. And for me, it was that I'm actually making a difference. So my jewelry is handcrafted by vulnerable youth in Toronto. It's an art therapy-based employment model, and we're changing lives through this employment model. So that was my value. It's not just jewelry. It's an avenue where jewelry is a byproduct. And because I've kind of leaned into that value proposition, that's what we do with our marketing. That's where we get our loyalty, get customers that love us, get customers that choose us over people who offer the exact same thing. And so I think, just even thinking about that and how you're going to leverage that is really important.
Yeah, and I do hear that a lot with the people that we do these podcasts with, is that whatever you do, make sure that you believe in it, because it's going to be not always fun. It's going to be very challenging and can be very difficult. So you have to really believe in what your product is and what you're doing as well.
Yes. And I think that's so key because like you said, it's not always going to be fun. There's going to be days where you will want to quit and you will just want to hang it up and say, I don't want to do this anymore because it's so challenging and I'm so defeated and I feel unmotivated. But if you're passionate about it, you will want to keep going because you're doing it for something that's greater, that you will want to work through because you just love it so much. So I think, that's so key to people. And I think too that e-commerce has made it so much easier. Just linking it back to e-commerce, I think it's made it so much easier to start a business. So even if you start a business, you do realize that that's not your passion. It's not like you've had to invest everything you own to start it, because it makes it more accessible. So it makes starting a business much more accessible. And I think it's great to just give it a try if it's something you're passionate about, and then learn from it. And you can make adjustments along the way if it doesn't work out the way you envisioned it. So I think that's the beauty also of e-commerce and starting a business.
Yeah, and it just brings in a lot more customers for your product. When you have a physical product that you can ship, then people don't have to come to a physical location to get it. You can send it to them. And so that makes starting the business easier and then running the business easier.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of believing in your product, I know you believe in what you're doing and what you have. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about what you've got going on, where to find your jewelry, or where to find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so like you said in the beginning, I run Kind Karma Company. It's a social enterprise. We employ at-risk and homeless youth in Toronto to handcraft jewelry. It's an innovative art therapy-based employment model, so they can stay employed a lot longer than they could in the past. And it just stems from the fact that I found that your traditional employment models and roles are very limiting, especially for people who are struggling with trauma and mental health challenges. If you've no experience, you have no education, you're basically kind of stuck just working in retail or the restaurant industry and the service industry. And that's challenging even as a healthy person. So imagine if you're going through, processing all this trauma that's happened to you, and then you've got to be happy and helping people day in, day out. It's very challenging. So I created this model. So they make the jewelry that you see on our website, and our website is kindkarmaco.com. And yeah, that's kind of how we're doing. We're doing great. We're coming up on 7 years, so we're still growing.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up today's podcast. So, Laurinda, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and thanks to all of our listeners, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Focal Insights Podcast. If you like this episode, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can be alerted of new episodes. See you next time.